Good evening, everybody. My name is Andy Gustafson, and I teach business ethics here. I also get to run a class called Business, Faith, and the Common Good. And there's a number of the students in that seminar that are here. But we also, when we have a speaker come, or a panel in this case, come to campus, we open it up to the public. So thank you for coming. We're glad you're here. And I think you'll find tonight's group very interesting to talk with, to learn from, and to get to interact with them as well. So thanks for coming. We have three with us, and they're going to talk to us about business, faith, and the common good, especially with relationship to investment advising and financial advising. And so we have three people that have had a lot of experience in that field, some less than others, but we have on the left Jeffrey Hitt, or on the right, you're right, Jeffrey Hitt. We have Morgan here as well, and also Katie Bruno. Katie also teaches for us here at Creighton. She's an alum. Has not been out that long, and it's pretty amazing if you go look at her LinkedIn, all the different things she's involved in. So she's a good role model for all of you to be following. So thanks for being here tonight. So I think we'll go ahead and get started just by letting each of them share what they do right now and kind of how they got to this point in their career. That's going to be very brief, and then we're going to get into some other questions to really have a good conversation about financial advising and the common good. So let's go ahead and start with you, Katie, if you don't mind.
Okay, yeah, I'll start. Thank you, Andy, for putting together this panel and inviting us to be here. And thank you to all of you for taking some time out of your Thursday night to be with us. So my name is Katie Bruno, and I am a financial advisor at Maureen Quinwolf Partners. We are an independent firm of Raymond James. I don't know how many of you have heard of them, but Tampa Bay Bucks Super Bowl was held at the Raymond James Stadium, so they are in Florida. I was a student here and graduated in 2014, and when I was a student I got an internship on Jobs for Jays with a financial advisor, and my summer job was to make his office paperless, so I was sitting there scanning at files every day. And I was a management major, I wasn't a finance major, I didn't know I was going to be a financial advisor, but as I was doing this internship, I was learning all about, what is an IRA, and oh wow, people save for retirement, and things like this, and got really interested in it. And when I graduated, he offered me a full-time job and the opportunity to get my securities licenses, so I did that. And did that for a few years as an assistant and what is called a paraplanner, which is basically a person who does all the planning for a financial advisor. So you're putting together the financial plans for the clients, and then you're sitting in the client meetings, you're taking all the notes, and you're doing all the follow-up. And I thought to myself, I should be doing this because I'm making like $40,000 and he's making like $1 million. So I should do this. So I told him I wanted to do it, and there was an opportunity for me at that firm at the time. So I moved to Florida and started working at the Raymond James headquarters, doing some consulting work where when a financial advisor was going to leave another firm and come to Raymond James, they would bring all their clients with them, and there's a lot of regulation involved and different things like that. So I was just walking advisors through the process and waiting for the right time to become an advisor. It's a very hard business to get started in. If you don't run in circles of money, it's very hard to make an income. And so I was waiting for the right opportunity, and I was pursuing my master's degree online here at Creighton, and I met a woman through the program who was very inspiring and motivating, and kept saying to me, what's next, and I said, I'm looking for the right opportunity because I need a paycheck. So she said, well, I'll sell you part of my business. So she sold me some of her clients so that I had a paycheck to get started. So this was in 2018, and then in 2020, I became a partner there, and I started pursuing my certified financial planner designation, and I also am a certified divorce financial analyst. So a lot of my clients are women who are going through divorce or widows. My practice is really catered towards helping women through different transitions in their life. I work with men too, but primarily I have a niche with women investors.
Thank you.
Cool, that was awesome. I'm Morgan Myers. I am actually Andy's wife Celeste's niece. So my dad and Celeste are siblings. I'm from Lincoln. I work at NBC Trust Company there in Lincoln. A little bit about me, I have been married for 5 years to my husband Kimry, who is home tonight with our twins, who are 20 months old. I have a son named Clement and a daughter named Frances, and they're kind of ultimately kind of what drives me in this business because it is challenging. I finished my degree at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln in finance, banking, and risk management in 2020. And when I was in school, I got a lot of questions about, I don't know why, but are you going to be a financial advisor? And I was always like an emphatic, no, that's not what I'm doing. It's kind of funny, I was kind of recollecting as I'm here tonight, like, oh, that's kind of funny. I said that like 5, 10, 20 times, and here we are. So I didn't think I wanted to be a financial advisor because I didn't think I was good at sales. I think what you'll learn tonight is that there's a lot more to financial advising, and arguably it's really not about sales, it's about people. It's about helping people, and it can be a really edifying career, albeit challenging, but a lot of my strengths actually are well suited. So I actually started working with a financial advisor through my old job. I was in the legal field, thought I wanted to go to law school, and decided to pursue my family and a different career in finance. And so I've been working at a law firm for 6 years, and I really liked it, but knew I wanted to make a jump into the financial services sector, and got that opportunity through my current boss now, Scott Weldon, who is the CEO of the trust company that I work for. I was a client of his, so it was a really cool opportunity for me to see what it was really like to be helped by someone, and to be treated like a person even when you don't have a lot of money. And so that really has kind of inspired my practice and my career in doing this. I probably have a lot less experience in this than these two because I started in this industry last fall, so I'm pretty fresh, but I'm happy to be here tonight. Thanks, Andy.
Yeah, thanks, Morgan. Jeff?
I'm Jeff Hitt. I got my job on financial services, financial advising in 2006. They were hiring, and it was a 2-week course. And so I had been working in retail. I have a degree in poetry, and I hated my job. I was making $9 an hour, and I was stocking shelves at Borders Books and Music. And one of my colleagues said, hey, I just got a job at TD Ameritrade answering phones. All you need to really have is a college degree. At that point, you didn't even need a college degree. So I called on a Monday. I had an interview on a Wednesday. I was hired on a Friday, and I started the following Monday. And I answered phones, giving people PIN password changes for their internet logins and quotes. But I had spent the previous 10 years of my 15 years professional life in customer service, retail stuff, helping run retail stores, and so it was just a natural stepping stone from helping people face-to-face to helping people over the phone. After about 3 years of just doing purely service and back office kind of stuff, one of my supervisors said, hey, I really think you're fine at this, but I really think you should be working with clients and helping win assets, bring assets to the firm. So I worked on a number of different teams as a lead generator for salespeople, and after doing that for a number of years and making decent money, I thought, hey, I know how to generate these leads. I know most of this stuff. Why don't I just, be the person who gets the leads? So in 2013, my wife and I adopted 3 boys. She stopped working, and I made the jump into the grown-up seat of doing that. So I've been working directly with clients, helping them manage their assets since 2013. In 2019, I made the shift from TD Ameritrade, where I was working and doing it all remotely over the phone. So everything that they do, and I mean, I'm assuming most of what you ladies do is face-to-face, right? Everything they did, what I would do over the phone with people in the central part of the country. So in 2019, instead of doing what the rest of the world was doing because of COVID and moving to being online and Zoom, I moved to face-to-face because I have excellent forward planning and thinking. So I manage an office. I have my own office in Bellevue with Edward Jones. What that means for me is that I work for a big company, but I'm my own boss. I decide when I'm going to be there and when I'm not going to be here. My sole responsibility of the firm is what do I bring in as far as fees and new assets and stuff like that. But if I feel like taking a 3-hour lunch, I take a 3-hour lunch. If I want to take my kids to a doctor's appointment, I take my kids to a doctor's appointment. So one nice thing about this job in this field is that you can actually build a life that has some room. And so when I made the shift from TD Ameritrade to Edward Jones, it was specifically to get out of the call center kind of world and actually sit across from people and be face-to-face. I think one of the things that I like most about what this job is money is a tool, and it's an important tool. What I've learned is that it's an important tool regardless of how much you have, but it's way more important when you have a lot less. And so being able to do business with the firm I'm with now as opposed to the firm I was before is I can decide who I want to work with. And so I will work with clients that are technically not profitable for me, where the time I spend sitting with them across the table costs me money. And I typically pick those clients for a couple of things. One, I have to like them, they have to want to work with me. That kind of stuff is normal. But I also want to focus on people and groups that are traditionally not served by financial services. And we can talk about more of that as we go along. But it's very important to me to take what I've been given and share it with other people. I have 30 first cousins, and I think 3 of us graduated college. Most of my family's blue collar. My brothers are all blue collar. My cousins are all blue collar. I don't come from money. I don't come from a money world. And so the people that I'm around and was surrounded by my whole life, like when Morgan was saying, what's an IRA, what's a 401k, like they don't know that. They don't know these basic things. And so it's important to me to share that with whomever it is that doesn't know those things. So.
Very cool.
You started us into the second question, which is sort of the million-dollar question here tonight.
It's almost like we talked about this ahead of time.
It's kind of like we've talked about this stuff ahead of time, yeah. But Morgan, we'll start with you and go to Jeff and then come back around to Katie this time. But how do you see what you do as a financial advisor contributing to the common good? And I'll just leave that kind of open. You can answer it how you wish. But how do you see what you do as a financial advisor contributing to the common good? And by common good, we kind of mean whatever helps all people to thrive and flourish as much as they can. I also, want to say one other thing. This is a housekeeping issue, but I have sign-up sheets. I'm going to pass them around if you need to tell your professor that you're here. So I'll pass those around while you're answering the question.
Okay, sounds good. How do I see financial advising contributing to the common good? I think one main thing that I think about is stewardship. If you think about it like you go to the doctor, he helps you steward your body. You go to the dentist, he helps you steward your teeth. I mean, those are weird examples, but the example being that we are to steward, whether, like Jeff was saying, we have a lot or a little. Sometimes it feels like it matters even more to steward what you have when it's a little. And so I think working with people at the trust company, we actually work with a lot of what you would call middle class people. And that's really important to us because of who we are there. But partially because stewardship is so important and it impacts them, and we really like working with people who love their families and are motivated to help them. So what you're doing for them is helping their family, maybe not just this generation, but the next generation and the next generation after that too. So there are a lot of different ways that is manifest kind of in the work that we do, but giving people who like don't always feel like they, for example, I'll use myself. When my previous boss, the law firm, told me like, you should go talk to this guy, Scott, and I was like, oh, I'm not really at the stage of life where I can take up somebody's time, you know? And so I kind of put that in my back pocket, but I really did have some questions, and I'm like, who's going to answer these questions for me? You know, Google's not doing it, the people I know don't know. And so when I went to him and was given this time and attention to help steward my life, I think another way that this is manifested when we help people steward their resources, they're able to do what like they're called to do in their life best, and use their time and their attention for the things that they are really good at. By us helping them with things maybe they don't want to do or don't want to spend their time and attention doing. So, those are a couple.
Yeah, that's great.
Those are a couple of things that I've thought of.
Yeah, Maury, I think stewardship's huge. Quick question, how many of you are studying finance? How many of you are studying business? So business and finance. How many of you, is this your freshman year? Great, so everyone, including the freshmen, unless your family, your close family is in finance in the business world, you probably know more than 90% of the people that you have in your life about finance, about wealth, about savings than most people do. Just think about your high school experiences and how much of that kind of stuff was talked about. You know, if you get your major, I graduated college in 2003. The first time I ever had any kind of conversation about what an interest rate was when I went to work for TD Ameritrade in 2006, right? Already you guys are gathering knowledge and ability and responsibility that whether you were aware of it or not. And so one of the things that is very clear to me is it's that kind of corny Spider-Man Peter Parker with great power must also come great responsibility. You're talking to people about things that really are life or death. In the state of Nebraska right now, there are, throughout the COVID crisis, there were no open beds in long-term care. Part of the reason is that there's just not enough, but also part of the reason is because there's not enough nurses and special care agents. So if you have a person who is going to need long-term care, end-of-life care, and they don't have the money to afford it, there is not a bed for them at this point. So that means they would be on Medicaid. Medicaid doesn't have beds open. So when you start talking about real things like that, if you have a client who has $500,000 and has 3 children, and one of them's a drug addict, leaving that child $175,000, $180,000 when you pass away is a death sentence to a number of them. So if you start thinking about what money means and how it plays into people's lives, you start understanding why it starts to really matter and be part of the public good. How many of you are here on a scholarship or some kind of grant? How many of those scholarships and grants were paid for and funded by individuals? Right? Do you guys know who funded it? That's okay. I mean, that's fine. I don't know who funded all of my grants and scholarships. But the point is, a lot of those things get paid for and get funded by people who look at their wealth and say, I want to give back to this thing I care about. So I think there's a lot of ways in which this plays out in the public good. A good financial advisor, a good financial planner helps people unpack that and asks them questions about that. And informs them and educates them about how these things like interest rate yields or IRAs or any kind of other nerdy kind of stuff we'll talk about tonight really kind of factors into how they want to live their lives. Okay.
Just to add to that, I'll say, money is emotional. We're happy when we have it, we're angry when we get it taken away from us, and we're sad when we don't have it. And so for me, financial planning is about giving people hope. It's a process. It's not something you do once in your life and then you're done. It's something that you update. It changes as your life changes, your goals change, your resources change. And so for me, when I talk about financial planning being a part of the common good, it's about giving people hope for a better path forward.
Okay.
There was one other thing I think too that we talked about.
You want to talk about fiduciary?
Yeah. Do you want to do it first?
Sure, I'll go. So another part of being a financial advisor is that you're held to what's called the fiduciary standard. And simply put, a fiduciary is someone that acts in the best interest of someone else. That's the most basic definition. Now, the financial industry has been known to be slimy and greedy, and people who charge large commissions or large fees, and you can do it yourself online for free, and you can just go out and buy any investment, and you don't need a financial advisor. Why would you pay for one? So as a fiduciary, you are acting in your client's best interest, and that means that you're fully disclosing all of those things. What you're going to get paid on the investment, how you're going to get paid on the investment, what the client can expect from you going forward. When you're a fiduciary, you are responsible for an ongoing relationship. It is not a transaction. It is not a one-time, I talk to you and I sell you this product and you're never going to hear from me again. And sometimes people get the impression that the financial industry is like that, and it can be if you're working with an advisor that is not held to the fiduciary standard. You guys expand on that.
Yeah, it's the difference between like a family practice, a family counselor, a family doctor, and Wolf of Wall Street. Any of those kind of movies, Boiler Room, Wolf of Wall Street, any of those kind of different movies where you see people calling and slinging the stock. That's a broker. That's a transactional based business. not everyone who does that is slimy, but they don't. Their only responsibility is, can the person afford this? Right. That's the only real question they have to ask themselves. A fiduciary has to ask his or herself, is this what's in their best interest? And if ultimately, because you're taking on that duty, if I'm working with a client and she has a particular need and we have two options, and one is best for her and I don't get paid, and the other is good enough for her and I get paid, a fiduciary really has to choose that first option, right? Just like, a doctor who's saying, well, if she says, I think you need this treatment, she can't offer another treatment that would probably be as good, but they can charge more for the hospital group. Right? You're having someone you're entering into a relationship where you have a custodial fiduciary kind of responsibility.
I think one way that I really kind of ingested what it means to be a fiduciary is when my boss, who's obviously a big mentor to me, told me that a fiduciary isn't something you do so much as it's someone you are. Like when you really care about someone else and you're treating them like a person and not an account or a commission or a paycheck, you're thinking about them, you're caring about them in such a way that what you do flows out of your relationship for wanting the best for them. And that's really helped me kind of conceptualize what that means and what standard that really is.
I want the next question to be about robo-advisors. And so robo-advisors, or even just sticking your money in the market and letting it go with the top 50 stocks or whatever, instead of having someone manage it. Like, what would you argue is your value added for your clients compared to a robo-advisor? Why should someone go to someone like you instead of a robo-advisor? We can start with Jeff on this one.
I don't have the chart in front of me. I don't have all the statistics, so I'm going to fudge it a bit. But if you look at all the different, 100% managed, just buying mutual funds and leaving it what it is, the retail investor gets a fraction of what everyone else who plays in the market gets. So in my 16 plus years of doing this, there was three things that I would notice that people would get themselves in trouble. It was will, skill, and time. Time is obvious. It's easy, right? If you're working 40, 50 hours a week, you have a career, you come home, you have a family, you have friends. You're not sitting there and reading that the CEO of such and such company, has committed financial fraud, or that there's an upstart. Someone's come in and bought LinkedIn and messed everything up. So you're just not having the time to pay attention to your assets. Skill, which is a better company? Home Depot or Lowe's? They're both big builders, but how would you choose between H2 and Lowe's? Home Depot or Lowe's? I'm just saying that symbol. How do you pick between them? Which is better, Samsung or Apple? McDonald's or Burger King? It's the skill, being able to figure out and looking at investment to buy. And the last thing is will. What I mean by will is people, when they invest, it's very hard when they are looking at a loss to cut that loss off and say, I've lost enough. On the flip side, when that stock or the investment's gone up a ton, to say, I've made enough. I can walk away from this, right? That's how people get themselves in trouble all the time when they're investing. And so those three things are not insurmountable, but the evidence of all the research that's done by all kinds of people that are smarter than me say that they don't do those things, right? We all know that if we eat less and exercise more, we'll lose weight. Our doctors tell us that, but we don't do it. We, as people, fundamentally just don't tend to do the things they should do. And so that's what a fiduciary advisor comes in and does, is say, I'm going to come and help you do this thing that you can't do. And it may be that you don't have the time. It may be that you don't have the knowledge. It may be you don't have the willpower, or you don't have the commitment to it. And so I think that's what an advisor brings to the table.
When it comes to the topic of how do we provide value to our clients, I always think about when a potential client calls you and they say, I'm looking for an advisor, and you say, oh, do you currently have an advisor? Yeah, I have an advisor. Oh, tell me why you're leaving them. And if the first thing that comes out of their mouth is, well, my account's not performing, then I generally already know that I'm not going to compete, because what I don't do is provide investment results. You can get investment results from going out to the market and buying a product. What I do is provide a process that's about the client, because what a client can't do is prioritize their goals. A lot of people cannot prioritize their goals and have the discipline to stick to them, and that's the value of a financial advisor. So it's educating the client and teaching them, and then keeping them on a path to meet their goals.
I like that. I think another thing is there's just a level of complexity. It's kind of what you were saying about time in a way. I know that when I went to college and I knew I wanted to study business, I was like, what do I want to study? This all sounds interesting to me. But I picked finance because it was the thing that was the most confusing to me. Like, I just don't understand the whole U.S. financial system. There's just a lot to it. Like, how does the stock market work? Like, I remember playing Life when I was younger and being like, this is just so confusing. I don't get this, So I really wanted to learn more about that, but I will say even spending 4 years in college studying it and now 2 years out of college studying it, and it's like, sometimes I feel like I know less than when I started because it's just a lot. So if you take the complexity of the markets and investing in that way, but then also these other decisions that people have to make, like when should I buy a house and how should I finance that house that I buy, and should I pay for my kids' college, or how should I do that? How should we fund that? I mean, there's like a lot of complexity that goes into an individual's like personal economy, and I don't even think that it's so much about solving people's problems, but as providing a sounding board for people to like spend time and come and talk it out, and then pretty soon they're like, oh, that's it, that's what I should do, or that, and it's like you're oftentimes kind of sitting there just like listening and hearing them, and they're like working out their own stuff, but like without providing that structure, and also a lot of resources that we can bring to the table as far as just knowledge, but then also like actual things that like you would just never know about. Like that's something that's been super cool getting into this, like, oh, that is awesome, I literally never knew that existed. There's a lot of really cool ways that you can do planning that's tailored to people that there's just no way to just sit at home and Google and find out about. So I think there's a lot there that really adds value that you can't just do on your own, and you'll be fine, but you'll be better, probably less stress in your life if you do meet with someone who can actually help you a lot.
Good, thanks. I want us to have at least an opportunity for you to share anything you want to talk about, because we talk about fiduciary, but also about transparency. So are there things you want to share about the importance of transparency in the work that you do for your clients? Katie, could we start with you on this one?
Sure.
Thanks.
I haven't thought that much about this one, but I always have said that if you do the right thing for the client, the paycheck takes care of itself, and I really truly believe that you don't worry about how you're getting paid, you worry about taking care of the client, and the paycheck follows. And every day I wake up with that mindset and do what's best for the client, even if it results in no pay. And I think Jeff said this earlier, he did say this earlier about taking on a client that's not profitable. And I always tell myself that if the client's not profitable now, I can make them profitable, because I can make them have more money if I do the proper planning. So a young client who comes to you only has $50 a month to put into a Roth IRA, you start them, you get them on a path. That person at 50, 60 years old, if they continue to listen to you, they bumped up their contributions as they made more money, that's $500,000, $750,000 that you've helped them accomplish. You're a part of that story for them. And so when it comes to talking transparency and talking about pricing with clients, I always tell clients that I charge a flat fee. It's a percent in most cases. Some clients I charge an hourly rate, but depending on what kind of work I'm doing for them. But typically I charge a percent of the assets that I manage. And if I'm managing $10,000, I'm making $100 a year on you. But if I'm managing $1 million, I'm making $10,000 a year on you. So we both sit on the same side of the table, and we both want that account to go up, because if you make more, I make more. And if you make less, I make less. And when the market goes down like it is now, my pay is down. We are truly on the same side of the table, and you don't ever have to wonder why I'm calling you, because I'm never getting a commission from you. I'm never trying to get a quick sale and take some money home that day, so.
Okay, yeah, thanks.
When I was thinking about transparency, and it's kind of a funny concept because you're in the financial service industry, so I don't know if any of you have looked at a prospectus recently, but like, that's all your rights and everything that determines how a fund can invest and what their objective is, and there's so much in there for you, but it's given to you and you probably just throw it in the trash when you receive it. Most people do. So I think that part of our job too is like being able to like actually do the work of reading through those things and being knowledgeable, and then being like, here's the few things that you actually care about or that are actually going to impact you on a real level. So transparency sometimes too is like wading through that, because there's a lot of like liability offload. Well, I told you everything, you can read it. But there's not a good way for people, again, time is our most valuable commodity that, you know, we cannot grow exponentially. And so I think that is a big piece of transparency.
That's good. Yeah, thanks. Jeff?
I agree with everything what Katie said about fee. I think the only thing I would add or nuance to that is also understanding how clients make money. So again, I think when before I got into the industry, before I started doing what I'm doing, if somebody would have asked how I thought people might make money in the stock market, I would have said picking the right stocks. 95% of all earnings is actually based on diversification, having a mix of assets that can survive as many different outcomes as possible. The other 3-4% is a mix of taxes and fees. So it's a significant portion of what your client is going to earn, what they pay in fees to you or to a partner. And so this gets back to the fiduciary, but it also gets to some of the common good. It's this whole mix. As a advisor, I get an opportunity to be sold to by what's called a wholesaler. A wholesaler works for an insurance company or a mutual fund company and recommends that I sell their product to my clients, because they don't have direct access to my clients, they have access to me. And so I have taken meetings with people who do that, and by and large it's fine. You know, it's a meeting that should have been an email. But you know, every once in a while they buy you lunch, and that's kind of nice. So I was having lunch with a wholesaler who was going to actually be leading a seminar for my clients on Social Security. It was for people who were not over the age of 62 yet. They weren't yet filing for Social Security, so it was people who were approaching that. And he and I were having lunch, and he was recommending to me this group of mutual funds his company offered. I had just so happened to recommend to my client that very day to sell out of them, because they were underperforming and overcharging. So he didn't know this, that I knew this going in. So he's pitching these funds to me, and I'm sitting there the whole time with my bond me, listening to him talk and think, but these funds are terrible. Like, I would never recommend this to my client. So I kind of asked him, I said, hey, so why would I recommend this fund to your client when you have this other class of funds, which with the same firm, mind you, that are better price and are better performing, but you make less money on them, your firm does, and so do I. Why wouldn't I recommend this to him? And then he began to talk about the differences, and they were all bupkis, but that's fine. But ultimately he said, well, what you should do is take these funds that charge your client more and put these funds that charge your client more into your fiduciary account and charge them again. It was legit, straight up what the wholesaler told me. And I just looked at him and I said, I would never do that. And he took a pause and looked at me, and I've never seen somebody, it was like doing card tricks with a dog. He looked at me like, I've never heard an advisor say that to me before. Which terrified me, because he talks to all the advisors who work in my field and in this area, like he covers this part of the country. So I think sometimes it's not just transparency, but it's also a willingness to kind of stand in the gap for your client and get in the way of that kind of, and there's another word for it, it's baloney. It's bull. and you have to kind of take that bullet. But again, if going back to what I said before, is like the reason why I knew that and I was prepared for that is because you did the work, you do the stuff ahead of time, you have the experience. My client just said, hey, this looks like it's underperforming. I don't really like this fund. I'm not making enough money. Like, that's all it was. So, transparency is understanding how things work, how things get paid. I don't have to have that conversation, though I did tell the client that story because, it was a funny story. But you don't have to tell all of them that, but you have to be able to see through all that and really understand how all those pieces kind of connect together.
I'd like us to just really hone in on, and I know in talking with you, each of you before, you all have ways in which you know that being an advisor isn't just about making more money for your client. That's important. We've talked about the fiduciary obligation in that, to grow your client's wealth. It's good for them, it's good for you, you're on the same side of the desk. But what if you were going to help other people understand financial advising, what is it that is beyond just making money that's important? What are important skills beyond making money that you enjoy doing as well? So we can start with Morgan this time. Is that all right?
Sure. I'm thinking of a story. I remember when I first kind of came on, I was doing a lot of preliminary training. I remember my boss telling me, like, you'll know that you're really caring for someone and helping them in a meeting if you hear them say something to the effect of, they're going on and then they pause and they're like, well, I know you're not my counselor, and then they just keep going. and it was a crazy day that I'll probably remember for a long time, that I was in a meeting with a gal who's a new client, and that very thing happened. We're talking and I'm trying to understand what she wants and how I can help her. And she's like telling me all this stuff, and kind of like I was talking about earlier, a lot of like working out a lot of the things that have been bothering her, and I'm just listening. And I think that was unexpected to me in this career is that you play the kind of role of therapist a lot. And it's not because you have a lot of wisdom or advice, but just that this in particular client realized that she had a lot of just shame and guilt about spending her inheritance from her mom, and she realized just in talking it through that it came from a place of, I'm not really acting this way because this is the way my mom acted. She was like always wanted to look like she had more than she had because she was ashamed of where she actually was in life. And so like those kinds of realizations, and somebody makes that, and so we had this conversation about living and spending out of your values and how you feel better as a person, not when people think something of you, but when you know what you value is really the way that you live. And so those kinds of experiences happen that have really surprised me. I never would have guessed that, and those are really meaningful. I mean, those are things that are really important. I mean, that could change the trajectory of her life and her children's lives, and for a long time, just because she took the time to think through that and be like, wow, light bulb went on. So that's a really unexpected.
It's a cool story.
Yeah,
Right?
thanks.
Jeff?
I love those kind of moments. There are very few times in my career where I feel like what I did or what I was involved with really took someone from this kind of a trait, kind of a path, to one that took them somewhere else that was better. But those moments, when they come, they're really rewarding. Talking to a couple that are really unhappy with their jobs and just hate getting up in the morning and sitting down with them and running the numbers and saying, you guys could quit tomorrow. And having them kind of talk about it over the phone, crosstalk, and having them call me 48 hours later and say, we quit our jobs. Can you help us roll over our 401ks? We're getting ready to move. We're doing it. Sitting in an office with a man who's weeping because his wife died and left him a certain amount of money, and he doesn't know what to do with himself. He doesn't know what to do with the time he has left. And convincing him, you don't need to, but if you like working, go back to work at 85, right? What Katie talked about, helping divorce women, find independence, talking to people who are first generation Americans, second generation Americans whose family don't speak English, who are building family businesses, and taking that leap to open up a food truck or to, you know, go into business for themselves. All of those things are so rewarding. And you only get to do those things if you put in the time where you sit down with a really boring couple that's done everything right, and they've got, you know, they're in their mid-30s and they have $150,000 and they've got a couple kids that are in grade school and they have 529 plans, and it's boring, it's vanilla. They know as well as you do what they should do, right? It's the drudgery stuff of it. It's also working with the really curmudgeonly, awful people who have more money than God and feel like they have no responsibility to anyone else but themselves, and they can spend their money how they want, and they're gonna die $4 million, and it's gonna go to nieces and nephews that they don't talk to. And they fight in scripted, they fight you over every penny that you tell them to spend, and every time you charge them any kind of fee, they wanna argue with you about it. You gotta do that kind of stuff so you can help the couple who's calling you because they have a $30,000 account and they just found these shares in a shoebox, and they're getting ready, they're filing Chapter 11 bankruptcy, and you tell them that they have $500,000 in shares they didn't know about. Like, that stuff happens if you're there and you do the time, you put it in. But that stuff is, you can't plan for any of that crap. You just have to be at the right place at the right time, right? And you only get to do that is if you put the time and energy and effort in. And you know, both Morgan and Katie, I've gotten to know them the last couple of days. It's clear to me they're doing that kind of stuff.
Okay.
I'll just add to that, well, sometimes I do joke that I'm a therapist for a living,
Yeah.
not a financial advisor.
Yep.
Because really, you can make something make financial sense on paper, you can run numbers, you can run calculations, you can do an analysis, and you can tell someone why they should do something financially. But it's the emotional part and the behavioral part that gets in the way, and that's really why they need you. And I'd say that when a client comes to me, any advisor, they already think that you're smart. They think you know more than them, or they wouldn't be there. So they're not there because they think you have the highest IQ or you're better than another advisor down the street. They're there because they're looking to build a relationship with you. And I always have said that you come in and you're a client, you leave and you're my friend. And it's making people feel like you truly care about them and their goals and their dreams, and that you're going to help them get there.
Good. The last question, I want us to have some time for question and answers from all of you. So I'll stop asking questions after this one. But what advice would you give to students that are maybe they haven't thought about financial advising till tonight, or maybe they're planning to be financial advisors? What would be a little bit of advice you would give to them? You're each at different stages in your career, but from where you're at, what would be a bit of advice you would give to a student at Creighton who's maybe thinking about going in that direction or is planning to go in that direction?
This is the part where I normally scare people off, talking about how hard it is. But I would say, even if you're not sure, there's so many different opportunities in the financial services industry. You do not, Morgan said it earlier, she thought it was a sales job. When I got started, I thought that I had to know everything about investments. That was actually the reason I pursued my master's degree in investment management, financial analysis, because I thought I needed to know how to pick a stock. And I really don't, because there are a lot of people a lot smarter than me who make research reports, and that's all they do all day long. And all I have to know how to do is read the research report and then tell my client what it said. It's being the person between, knowing everything about the stock and knowing how to interpret some of that. So, but there are so many different areas that you can get into in this business, and you don't have to know everything, and you don't have to know that you actually want to be an advisor. There's everything from being the people who work with advisors to support advisors, selling products. There's people who work in operations. There's people who work in the regulatory part and make sure that advisors are doing the right things and saying the right things. And this industry, even down to like what I post on social media, I cannot just go out to my social media and make a post. I have to send it to compliance, and they have to say, yeah, you said okay, you can post it. So there's so many different roles in the industry, I guess is what I'm getting at. So don't cancel it out if you think you can't do sales or think you don't know everything about investments. And I'll also just say that it's a really good business because you're independent, you get to set your own schedule every day. And I joke that if you're thinking about being an attorney, you're capped on the amount of money you can make because you charge an hourly rate as an attorney and there's only so many hours in a week. But as a financial advisor, you're not capped because you just got to accumulate more assets to raise your paycheck. It's not about working more hours. It is in the beginning, but over a period of time, it's not.
Cool. Morgan?
Cool. I am thinking, this is probably a little bit more broad, but someone said this to me about, like, when you come to an ethical dilemma, which we all will in our careers, you can't decide at that time to be the kind of person who, like, knows how to handle it, like, because you're there and it's now. So thinking about, like, who you are and your character, and I just think about all the ways that contributes to the common good, whether you end up here in the financial services industry and financial advising or literally anywhere else. We, like, impact real people and with the work that we do when we go to work each day, and so the kind of people that we are and the character that we have and the virtues that we cultivate in ourselves, those things, like, they make a real difference in the world. So if we're talking about contributing to the common good, I mean, it's you. And so I guess I would just encourage you with that. I think that I relied on that a lot, feeling like, I don't even know why I'm getting this degree sometimes, and it's like, I always came back to the character thing, and I ended up getting hired because someone liked my character, not because they liked how much I knew. And so I think that goes a long ways in your career, but also specifically just in contributing to the common good wherever you land.
Great. Jeff?
I have 3 things. I think the first thing is that become a student of people, and what I mean by that is really spend some time understanding what makes people tick. We've talked about a couple times in this conversation about how, like, it's the emotion that makes the decision. Really learn why people do what they do. If you're not curious about people, you'll be a bad advisor. The second thing I would do is be curious about what the reality of money is in people's lives. What it means to, most of you probably at some point know what it's like not to have enough money in some way, shape, or form. But very few of you probably know what it means to not have enough money to feed your kids yet, or to pay to have enough money to not be a burden to family. Some of you might, but most of you probably don't. Read about those things. Ask people who've gone through it. Learn what it's like. Learn what the emotions that come up when that comes up for people is, because that's what's driving their decisions. Right? My parents' generation and their parents' generation lived through financial crisis. You guys are all coming up at the tail end of financial crisis. There are a lot of people right now who have lost jobs or who have understand what that does to people, because that's going to drive it. And the last thing I would say is get really interested in something other than finance. It could be books, it could be movies, it could be sports. Have something else that you really enjoy, and really pour into that part of your life. Work as hard at that as you do at something else. Be a whole person. I picked up a client in the last year because he went to my website, and I was the only advisor out of 20 or 30 looked at that didn't mention the Huskers. He's a game developer. He didn't want to sit in a room with people who were going to talk to sports about him. But I talked about records and poetry. Be a whole person. Don't so many. And I've been doing this. I sat with people, perfectly fine people, but they can't have a conversation with you about anything other than money. Don't be that person. That person sucks, right? Become a whole person.
Very good. Well, let's thank our panelists first. This has been great, guys. Thank you so much. But I'd also like to open it up for questions. Do any of you have thoughts or questions that were coming up as we were listening to them talk? They gave us a lot to think about. Questions you would like to raise for the panel? Be to one person or to all 3? Yeah.
This is something for anyone, but I know you guys talked a lot about people's like relationships with money. Like when you're taking on like a new client, do you ever have them like take an assessment to kind of see where they're at with that, or is that something you just like gauge over time?
It's a good question. Go ahead, I'm still thinking.
Well, when I take on a new client, I have a questionnaire that I have them fill out. It is not like a behavioral assessment that asks them to answer like questions about money. It's, you know, tell me what your top three financial goals are. There are some open-ended questions, and then some of it's just filling out. But a lot of times when they're filling that out, by the time I get that questionnaire back, I can identify some things that we need to talk about. And if you ask the right questions in a meeting, you're gonna get all the information that you need to know. Here's an example. I had a prospect who called, and she'd inherited some money from her dad who had a farm in Iowa, and when she came in, she was a hoarder, like the hoarders that you see on TV. And to the point where she would lose her paperwork. Like she could not even fill out the paperwork. She would call, Katie, I lost my paperwork. Katie, I lost my paperwork. And by the time we got down to it, you know, her biggest concern about the money was that she lived in poverty her entire life. And you start to realize that a lot of hoarders come from poverty, and that's why they can't give anything up, is because they are attached to items because that is how they find value. But it's one of those things that you pick up at as you go and you start to realize about people. So anyway, it was discovered through the questionnaire process, but it's not a behavioral assessment. It's a lot more just talking and getting to know their goals and trying to figure out what they want their money to do. And in her case, she did not know what she wanted her money to do. She'd never invested. She knew she didn't want to use it, and she specifically said, I have a problem going to thrift stores, because, you know, she got everything on sale, just multiple items of everything.
That's a good question. I do think it's important, but I also think it's important for people to not feel like a test subject or something too. Like, so I kind of am like, I want to be careful about the like questionnaire stuff, but like the question that I love asking people when I sit down with them is, what's on your mind? Because one thing I think that's interesting about money is that every part of your life touches it. And so when you start talking about money, all this stuff comes up. And so what's on people's mind is a lot of times very telling about what's going on, what they're thinking about, what's consuming their thoughts. Because Katie's talked about this several times, but like we're emotional. We have emotions. So we would like to think we're super rational beings and we can always like think through logic. But like if something's really bothering us and super heavy on our heart and our mind, like we can't, like that clouds it. And so like until you like peel back the layers of those things and realize like, what's going on? What do you actually care about? Like my agenda doesn't matter at all at that point until we get somewhere where it's like I understand where they're coming from. So I guess that is a behavioral assessment. Or what was your question exactly? How did you word your question?
More of just like if you did like a formal assessment, or if it was just through conversation.
Yeah.
I just wanted to add something that I thought about as she was talking, that a lot of times they are scared to meet with you. They are afraid of being judged. They are afraid they're not where they should be. And so it's being completely open-minded. Somebody could have done everything right, and they may be 50 years old and it's the first time they met with a financial advisor because they feel they haven't done things right. And so, you know, it's really being open-minded, and then when they tell you those things, it's not, you know, dropping your chin to the table and acting like they told you something that you've never heard before, even if it is.
That's true.
Whether it's a lot or a little. I would say that my process is a mix of both. I know what I want to know, but I don't know how this person wants to share with me. And so I don't ever hand, and this is personal, I don't ever hand my client a sheet to fill out. It's more efficient to do that, but I just don't operate that way. I don't look at a piece of paper and read it and feel like I know anything. That's just not how I operate. So if I'm sitting with a prospect, or if I'm sitting with a client that I haven't met with before because I've inherited from someone else or something, I'll just have a really informal conversation, and I will ask them all the questions that people love to get asked. You know, what do you do for a living? You know, we've been talking a lot like it's a one-on-one conversation, but I would say most of the time for me, it's a couple. So I'll ask them questions like, what do you guys like about each other? You know, how long have you been married? How'd you meet? You know, I'll spend 40 minutes of an hour meeting just learning about the family, right? Because that client's not there to place a trade or make a transaction. That client's going to be with me for the rest of my career if I do it right. So my process is the same process as like a first date, which I haven't gone on for a very long time. but it's the same process when you make a new friend, or when you take your time. But you should also really know that I need to know things like, what kind of debt does this person have? Was this person's parents good with money? Which of their kids are they really worried about? You know, what's going on in their industry? Like, is their field of work something that they're going to be able to do for a really long time, or is that industry going to have a lot of layoffs? Where do they live in the county, in the city, in the state? How do they feel about the president? How do they feel about the last president? Right? All this stuff plays into the kind of stuff that I want to know. I want to know everything. Right? Now I'm not going to use everything, but I want to know everything. And so my process for that is to ask a lot of questions, a lot of yes and. Tell me more about that.
Well,
Can I add something?
one more, Kate.
It's just as much an interview for us as it is for them, because
Yes.
we don't have to work with everyone that walks in our office. We can say no. So if I can already tell that somebody is going to never be happy with something I do, or is going to, you know, take countless hours or not do what I say I'm gonna do, I don't have to work with them. I can say no, or I can say I don't think you're a good fit, I think you should call this person, and it's completely okay. And that is another great thing about this business, is you can fire your clients. They can fire you, but you can fire them too.
It's reciprocal. Cool.
Andy, can I say something?
Yes, please do.
So,
Kate.
I'm Dr. Washer. I'm the Director of Financial Planning here at Creighton. So, if you are interested in financial planning as a career, please come and see me, and I would be glad to talk with you about that. We have a ton of internships, great internships. The industry is really pushing for diversity. Virtually every employer I talk to, they want to interview, talk to women, minorities, because the industry is mainly white males, older white males that will be retiring.
Annoying older white males.
Annoying. Older white males.
Pompous, self-important.
And the other thing that I would recommend is I do an online class. It's BUS 303. It's a financial independence class, creating financial independence. So whether or not you go into financial planning or not, I think it's a great class for you, so that when you work with people like this, you'll know a little bit more. So my office is 3rd floor of Harper. Washer is my last name, just like a washing machine. Happy to talk with you, Zoom with a group of you, you know, whatever. And I'll stick around if you want to talk after this.
Good, thanks for saying that, Kate. Appreciate it.